Good morning, students. Welcome to this online class. This is your social science period, and today, in this period, through this recorded video, I am going to cover the remaining topics of Unit 2 History, that is Nationalism in India. I repeat, today, in this period, through this recorded video mode class, I am going to cover the remaining topics of this Unit 2 History, that is Nationalism in India. This video will be the concluding video. The concluding video of this Unit 2 Nationalism in India. So today I will cover few topics in this video, and I appeal all my students to listen carefully and to watch this video thoroughly, so that they can better understand this content and concepts which are given in this textbook. Students, today our first topic is the limits of civil disobedience. The limits of civil disobedience, that is the topic. That means, so far we have studied the rich peasants, patidars, jats in Uttar Pradesh, they participated. The poor peasantry also participated. The merchants and the industrialists, they also participated. Okay, the working class, their participation was very limited. Except in Nagpur region, they have not participated on large scale. We have also studied about the women's participation in the civil disobedience movement. Now let us see, is there any class, is there any group of people who have not showed much interest in the participation of this civil disobedience movement? Is there any class, is there any section of people who have not showed that much interest in participating in this civil disobedience movement? Yes, there are few groups of people. There are few groups of people such as the untouchables, whom we call Dalits or depressed caste people. Okay, these people have not participated in this civil disobedience movement. Yes, that means the civil disobedience movement is having some limitations. All classes, all social groups, all sections of the society have not participated in this civil disobedience movement. Who have not participated? These untouchables, the Dalits or the depressed caste people, their participation was not there in this civil disobedience movement. So why they have not participated? What is the reason? Let us see, find out. So all social groups were not moved by the call given by Mahatma Gandhi in carrying out, all the social group people, all sections of people in the society, they were not moved by the call given by Mahatma Gandhi to participate in the civil disobedience movement. One of such group is what? That is untouchables. Untouchables. Untouchables in Hindi we call what? Those people whom we are not giving equal treatment with us. Asprashyata, untouchability. Okay, lower caste people, inferior people. So untouchables was one of such group. Untouchables, one of such group. Okay, who formed in 1930s. This untouchable group, untouchability was there in ancient India. Some classes people comes under untouchables. They were regarded as inferior people in the society. They comes under the lowest category. Generally, these people are always kept outside the outside the Chaturvarna system. They are asked to live in the outskirts of the villages. The upper caste people, they are not mingling with these people. They are not giving due respect to these people, equal to them. So these untouchable people, untouchability was practiced, and these untouchable people have not moved by the call given by Mahatma Gandhi to participate in this civil disobedience movement. All the untouchables, they formed into group in 1930s, and they called themselves as what? Dalits, or depressed caste people. I can say like this: for the first time, it is the Britishers. For the first time, it is the Britishers who have used the term what? Depressed caste people or Dalits in 1933 or 35. So it is the British government, the Britishers, who called the untouchables as what? Depressed caste people. Okay, 1935, I think, 1935. Okay, or Dalits. For a long time, the Congress, Indian National Congress, okay, ignored these Dalits. For a long time, the Indian National Congress have ignored the Dalit people in their party. Why? What is the reason? Because the Congress party people, they believed that if they will allow, if they will support these Dalit people or the depressed caste people, then the Sanatanis, here Sanatanis means what? The high caste people, the upper caste people in the society who are more in number in their party, they will get angry. They will get angry. Okay. Hence, their support will be withdrawn. For a long time, the Indian National Congress Party, they ignored the Dalits with the fear that if they will give importance to these people and support these people, then the Sanatanis, that means the upper caste people in the society whose membership is more in the Indian National Congress, they will withdraw their support. Okay, now, but Mahatma Gandhi, he declared that, Swaraj would not come. Mahatma Gandhi declared that Swaraj would not come for 100 years also if untouchability was not eliminated. Mahatma Gandhi strongly believed that if we will not give support to this Dalit people, if untouchability will not be eliminated from the Indian society, then even after 100 years, we will not get Swaraj, freedom, to our country, India. And Mahatma Gandhi gave a new name to these untouchable people and called them as what? Harijans. So who gave the name to untouchables as Harijans? Mahatma Gandhi. Here Harijans means what? The children of God. So it is Mahatma Gandhi. He believed that unless and until the untouchability will be eliminated from the Indian society, we will not get Swaraj to our country even after 100 years. Hence Mahatma Gandhi, he gave a new name to the untouchable people as Harijans. Harijans, that means the people of the children of God. The children of God. So, organized satyagraha, Mahatma Gandhi even organized several satyagraha movements in favor of this depressed caste people or Dalits. Mahatma Gandhi organized several satyagrahas in order to secure the entry of these untouchables into temples, to access public wells, tanks, to walk on the roads, to went to schools, etc. That means it is with the effort put by Mahatma Gandhi, but these untouchables were allowed to enter into temples, public places, tanks, wells, roads and schools. Even Mahatma Gandhi himself cleaned the toilets to dignify the work of the Bangi. Here Bangi means what? Sweepers. Here Bangi means what? Sweepers. Who were called Bangis? Bangis are nothing but called, no one called. And Bangis are none other than they were called sweepers. So Mahatma Gandhi himself have cleaned the toilets in order to dignify the work of the Bangi, I mean the sweepers. And he persuaded the upper caste people. Mahatma Gandhi, he persuaded the upper caste people what? To change their heart, to change their mind and give up the sin of untouchability in the society. And Mahatma Gandhi persuaded all the upper caste people that they should give up the practice of untouchability, which is a sin. Mahatma Gandhi only called the practice of untouchability as a sin, and he persuaded all the upper caste people to change their mind and to change their heart, their attitude towards these untouchable people. Okay, but many Dalit leaders were keen on a different political solution to their problems. But many depressed caste leaders are there. Many depressed caste leaders are there. They believed that unless and until they will get political power in their hands, many Dalit leaders they believed that unless and until they will be given the political power in their hands, their living conditions will not be improved. Hence, these political leaders they always demanded some reserved seats in the educational institutions, in jobs, and separate electorates in the council. Okay, like this. I mean, many Dalit political leaders they believed that unless and until political power is given in their hands, their living conditions will not be improved. Hence, these political leaders, these depressed caste political leaders, they always demanded some reservations, reservation of some seats in the schools, colleges, jobs, and also they demanded separate electorate. Okay, that would choose Dalit members. Okay, in the legislative councils. They believed that political empowerment, okay, would help the Dalit in improving the living conditions. That's why Dalit participation in the civil disobedience, okay, was very much less. I mean, the Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement was therefore very limited. Very less number of people participated in this civil disobedience movement. Very less number of Dalit people, their participation was found in this civil disobedience movement, particularly in Maharashtra and Nagpur region, where the Dalit, organizations are very strong. In Maharashtra and Nagpur region, the Dalit organizations are very strong. So in such areas, the participation of Dalit people, the depressed class people in the civil disobedience movement was very limited. Next, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He is the leader of the Dalit people in India. He is the leader of the depressed class society. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who organized the Dalits into a depressed class association in 1930. You understand that one? Who organized the Dalits into the depressed classes association in 1930? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. I repeat, it is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar who have organized Dalits into depressed classes association in 1930. And many times Ambedkar clashed with Mahatma Gandhi in India. Particularly, we can see in the second roundtable conference. Actually, in the second roundtable conference, we know already studied the Mahatma Gandhi participated. So, from Indian National Congress, and like many other political parties and the leaders also participated. And in the second roundtable conference, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar convinced the Ramsay MacDonald, the convener of this roundtable conference, to give separate electorates for the Dalit people or the depressed caste people. And he was convinced, and that's why he declared the communal award. I mean, Ramsay MacDonald, the convener of the second roundtable conference, he agreed for the demand made by B.R. Ambedkar for separate electorates for Dalits or depressed caste people. But that was not liked by Mahatma Gandhi. That's why Mahatma Gandhi in the middle, he boycotted that second roundtable conference and came to India, and he went to Pune and started that fast unto death, Amran Anshan. So Mahatma Gandhi was not happy with that one, but Ambedkar also got angry with Mahatma Gandhi. But anyhow, after the conference, Ambedkar also came back to India and went to Mahatma Gandhi and asked, why since you are encouraging our Dalit people, you are given a new name, Harijans, you are calling the people as children of God, you worked a lot for the upliftment of the Dalit people, then why you are not happy when that person was declared separate electorates or some seats were reserved for Dalit people? Then Mahatma Gandhi told to Ambedkar, actually the British government, they are not giving what separate electorates for Muslims, Muslim League people, Indian National Congress League people, or the Dalit people or depressed class people. Actually, by dividing the seats, they want to divide our Indian society. That means they are trying to break our unity in the name of caste and religion. Mahatma Gandhi told Ambedkar, actually, I am not against of separate electorates, but by declaring this separate electorates or reservation of seats for Dalits and other people, the British government is trying to divide the Indian society on the name of caste and religion and language, which is very, very harmful to our unity, which is our strength. Then Mahatma Gandhi understood what? Then Ambedkar understood about Mahatma Gandhi. Hence, an agreement was signed. An agreement was signed between B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi at Pune, that is called Pune Pact. Here, Pune Pact was signed in 1932. The Pune Pact was signed in the year 1932 between Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi. Underline that one. The Pune Pact was signed in 1932. The Pune Pact was signed in the year 1932 between Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi, and according to the pact, Ambedkar agreed that he will not demand separate electorates until and unless our country got independence. Okay. The Dalit movement, however, continued to the apprehensive of the Congress-led nationalist movement. Okay. Now, some of the Muslim political leaders, another group of people who have not showed that much interest in participating the civil disobedience movement. So the next group of people are what? The Muslim political organizations. See, some of the Muslim political organizations in India were also lukewarm. Lukewarm means what? Only namesake they said that they will cooperate, but in actual practice they have not cooperated. Many Muslim League political, or I can say many Muslim political leaders, or many Muslim political organizations in India were also lukewarm in their response to the civil disobedience movement. I mean, namesake they said that they will cooperate, they will participate, but they have not shown any interest in the movement. After the decline of non-cooperation Khilafat movement, after the end of the non-cooperation Khilafat movement in India, a large section of Muslims felt alienated from the Congress. I mean, after the end of the non-cooperation Khilafat movement in India, many Muslim leaders, they were alienated from the Congress party. They came out from the Congress party. From mid 1930s, the Congress came to be more visible, associated with openly Hindu religious nationalist groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. Okay, as relations between Hindus and Muslims worsened, in India, each community organized what? Each community organized religious processions and with militant fervor, provoking Hindu-Muslim communal clashes everywhere, and not in various not in what? Not only in one two places. Okay, this riots took place in all various cities in India. Every knot deepened the distance. I can say every knot deepened the distance between the two communities. I mean, these communities, they were divided. The difference was increased after the end of that non-cooperation Khilafat movement. So after the non-cooperation Khilafat movement only, the gap between Muslims and Hindus was increased. Communal rights were increased everywhere in India. Okay, now each community, they are taking rallies against each other. The Congress and the Muslim League made efforts to negotiate an alliance. Both the Congress party and the Muslim League party, they tried to negotiate to make friendship with each other. And in 1927, listen, underline, in 1927, it appeared such a unity could be forged. The important differences were over the question of the representation in the future assemblies that were to be elected. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, okay, one of the leaders of the Muslim League, is one of the leader, not the leader. Muhammad Ali Jinnah is one of the leader of Muslim League, was willing to give up the demand of separate electorates. I repeat, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is one of the Muslim League leader, was willing to give up the demand of separate electorates. Okay, he agreed that I will not demand separate electorates for Muslims. If Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly, if Muslim people will be given some reserved seats in the Central Assembly, then definitely they will not demand separate electorates. Okay, Muhammad Ali Jinnah said that if the Muslim people will be given some reserved seats in the Central Legislative Assembly, then they will not demand separate electorates. Okay, and the representation in the proportion of to population in the Muslim dominated provinces like Bengal and Punjab. More Muslims are found in Bengal and Punjab. Negotiations over the question of representation continued, but all the hopes of resolving the issue at the All Party Conference in 1928. You understand? All Parties Conference was held in 1928, which disappeared when M.R. Jayakar of the Hindu Mahasabha, M.R. Jayakar of the Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed the efforts of efforts at a compromise. He said that we will not compromise with the Muslim League people. We will not give any reserved seats to the Muslim League people in the Central Assembly. Okay. When the civil disobedience movement started, there was thus an atmosphere of suspicion. When the civil disobedience movement started in India by Mahatma Gandhi, so there was a suspicion and distrust between both the communities. Alienated from the Congress, a large section of Muslims could not respond to the call given by Mahatma Gandhi. Many Muslim leaders and intellectuals expressed their concern about the status of Muslims as a minority within India. They feared that the culture and the identity of the Muslims minorities would be submerged, would be ended under the domination of the Hindu majority. Like that they feared. That's why they have not supported openly. Now our last topic, that is the sense of collective belonging. The sense of collective belonging. So now we will read how this sense of collective belonging developed in India among the people. I mean, what are the factors that are responsible in promoting the unity, in promoting the feeling of nationalism among the Indians? Or what are the things that are responsible in promoting the feeling of nationalism among Indians? Okay, I mean, what are those things that are responsible to promote the feeling of unity, the feeling of togetherness, the feeling of nationalism among Indians? So let us study the sense of collective belonging. Okay, now nationalism spread when the people began to believe that they are all part of the same nation. When we believe that we all belong to the same nation, when all the people they believe that all the people belong to the same nation, then only the feeling of unity will be developed. So nationalism spreads when the people begin to believe that they are all the part of the same nation. When they discover some unity, okay, that binds them together. But how did the nation become a reality in the minds of the people? How did people belonging to different communities, regions, or language groups develop a sense of collective belonging? Let us see. I mean, what are the factors that are responsible to develop the collective belonging or unity or the feeling of nationalism among the people? See, let us. The sense of collective belonging came partly through the experience of united struggle. That means it was during the freedom movement in India, which was fought by both Hindus and Muslims. So during that freedom movement, the feeling of unity was actually developed. The feeling of unity actually developed when both Hindus and Muslims they together fought in the freedom movement against their common enemy Britishers. At the time, the feeling of unity was developed. But there was also a variety of cultural processes. Through which nationalism captured people's imagination. There are several other ways. There are several other ways or other means through which the feeling of unity, the feeling of nationalism, the feeling of togetherness was developed. The feeling of togetherness was developed, such as common history. We all had a common history. So this common history is also helped in the development of unity among the people. Common history, common fiction, common folklore, songs, popular prints, popular prints and symbols all played a part in making the feeling of nationalism. I mean folklore, popular prints, common history, common culture, songs and symbols. All these are, I repeat, common history, common culture, folklore, popular prints, songs, okay, songs, at the same time some symbols. All these are responsible for the development of nationalism or the feeling of unity among the people of India. Now you have studied in history unit 1, that is nationalism in Europe, that how the nation is being identified. We have studied that Germania, Marini, okay. So there the nations were identified with a female allegory. I mean nations were identified with allegory figures. Allegory means what? Which are not in real, only imagination, abstract idea. So we have studied in European history, that is in nationalism in Europe, that the nations at the time were identified by an allegory figure, especially female allegory figure. In reality, such what figures are not there. In India, we are calling what our country as Bharat Mata. Here, Bharat Mata, I mean that's a allegory, a figure, a female figure. In reality, such a female figure is not existed on the earth. Only it's imagination. So same thing is said here. The identity of the nation, as you know, studied in chapter 1, is the most often symbolized in a figure or image. I mean, generally, the nations are identified with a female allegory figure. Generally, the nations are always identified with the female allegory images, as we studied Germania and Marini in European history. Okay, this helps create an image which this helps in creating image with which the people can identify the nation. Okay, it was in the 20th century, underline, it was in the 20th century, okay, with the growth of nationalism, okay, with the growth of nationalism, that the identity of India came to be visually associated with the image of Bharat Mata. That means it was in 20th century. It was in 20th century the country India, the nation India was began to identified with the image of Bharat Mata. Okay, the image was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Underline. Underline this one more question. Who created the image for the first time? Who created the Bharat Mata image for the first time? Who created the Bharat Mata image for the first time? The Bharat Mata image for the first time was created by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee or Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Okay, next. In 1870, this also one mark objective question. Please underline. In 1870, in 1870s, he wrote Vande Matram, a hymn to the motherland. I mean a prayer to the motherland. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay was the first person who what created the image, who visualized the image of Bharat Mata. Okay. At the same time, in 1870s, he wrote Vande Matram, a hymn, a prayer to the motherland. Next, later it was included in this novel Anand Math. I mean, this Vande Matram, this song, this prayer song, hymn to the motherland, it was included in the famous book Anand Math. So Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, first, he is the first person who created the what? Who created the image Bharat Mata. First point, one word, one more question. Who created the image for the first time? The Bharat Mata, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Who wrote Vande Matram? Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay or Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Who wrote the book Anand Math? Anand Math was also written by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. So these are the three objective questions. Next, Anandmat and widely sung during the Swadesh movement in Bengal. This Vande Mataram song was sung by the people of Bengali during the Swadesh movement in Bengal. During the Swadesh movement in Bengal, when we preferred Indian goods and boycotted foreign goods at the time, during the Swadesh movement, this song was sung by many Bengali people. Next one. Moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abhindranath Tagore. You underline this one. Another one more question. Abhindranath Tagore. So, moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abhindranath Tagore painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. Actually, initially, the image of Bharat Mata was created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Later, Abhindranath Tagore painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. Okay, image created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay for the first time. And who painted the first image? Abhindranath Tagore. Okay, Abhindranath Tagore, he first painted the image of Bharat Mata. In this painting, you can see one picture is given in the textbook. In this painting, Bharat Mata is portrayed as an ascetic figure. I mean, Sadhu Sannyasi figure. Female Sannyasini. In this, picture, the Abhindranath Tagore, he showed Bharat Mata, he portrayed the Bharat Mata as a ascetic figure, female ascetic figure, she is calm, composed, divine. She is calm, composed, divine and spiritual. In subsequent years, the image of Bharat Mata acquired many different forms. In the coming years, the Bharat Mata image was transformed in different forms as it circulated in popular prints and was printed by different artists also. Devotion to this mother figure came to seen as evidence of one's nationalism. Everybody likes Bharat Mata. So the word Bharat Mata itself helps in promoting nationalism or the feeling of unity among the people of India. The idea of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore. In the late 19th century, Indian nationalists began recording folk tales sung by the bards. Okay, I repeat, it is the second one, the folklores. The folklores are the second important thing that helps in promoting nationalism or feeling of unity among the people. So the ideas of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive the Indian folklore. In the late 19th century, in India, nationalists began recording folk tales sung by bards and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. These tales, they believed and gave a true picture of traditional culture that had been corrupted and damaged by the outside forces like British people. It was essential, to preserve the folk tradition in order to discover one's national identity and restore a sense of pride of one's past. In Bengal, you underline one more question. In Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore himself began collecting ballads, nursery rhymes, and myths, and led the movement for folk. Folk revival. Now another one more question. In Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore worked for the revival of folklore. Similarly, in Madras, underline, very important question. In Madras, Natesa Sastri. I repeat, in Madras, Natesa Sastri published a massive 4-volume collection of Tamil folk tales. Natesa Sastri from Madras, he published a massive 4-volume collection of Tamil folk tales. Similarly, the title of the book is The Folklore of Southern India. The title of the book was The Folklore of Southern India. You will be asked, The Folklore of Southern India was written by Natesa Sastri. The Folklore of Southern India was written by Natesa Sastri. He believed that folklore was national literature. Natesa Sastri believed that the folklore was our national literature and it was the most trustworthy manifestation of the people's real thoughts and characteristics. As the national movement developed, nationalist leaders became more and more aware of such icons and symbols in unifying people and inspiring what in them a feeling of nationalism. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, okay, a tricolor flag. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, I mean three color tricolor flag, red, green, yellow. Actually, our Indian flag was in three colors: red, green, yellow. Red, green, yellow was the first color of our Indian flag. So during Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag in red, green, yellow color was designed. It had 8 lotuses. How many lotuses? 8 lotuses. The tricolor flag, red, yellow, green. This flag had 8 lotuses, and all these 8 lotuses represent 8 provinces of British India. All these 8 lotuses, all these 8 lotuses represents the 8 provinces of British India, and a crescent moon symbol was there. There's a crescent, I mean semicircle. There's a crescent moon representing both Hindus and Muslims. The crescent moon representing the Hindus and Muslims. So that flag was devised in Bengal during Swadeshi movement. Three colors, tricolors, red, green, yellow, and 8 lotuses. Each lotus represent one of the provinces of British India, and a crescent moon was there representing both Hindus and Muslims. By 1921, by 1921, Gandhiji has designed a Swaraj flag. By 1921, Gandhiji devised or designed a Swaraj flag. It was again a tricolor flag with a red, green, and white. So Gandhiji also designed a tricolor flag in 1921 with a red, green, and white. Earlier what? Red, yellow, and green was there. Now red, green, and white is there. And had a spinning wheel in the center with blue color. I mean red, green, white color, and in the middle there was a spinning wheel which is in blue color. Okay, representing the Gandhi's ideal of self-help. This wheel always represents the self-help. Now carrying the flag, okay, holding it aloft during marches became a symbol of the defiance. I mean, whenever any movement carried in India against the British government, this flag was carried on the soldiers by the satyagrahis. Another means of creating a feeling of nationalism, another means of creating the feeling of nationalism was through the what? Reinterpretation of our history. Reinterpretation of our history. By the end of the 19th century, many Indians began feeling that to instill a sense of pride in the nation, Indian history had to be thought about differently. The British saw Indian, as backward and primitive, incapable of governing themselves. In response, Indians began looking into the past to discover India's great achievements. Okay, they wrote about the glorious developments in ancient times when art and architecture, science and mathematics, religion and culture, law and philosophy, craft and trade had been flourished in India. Okay, the glorious time in their view was followed by a history of decline when India was colonized by Britishers. These nationalist histories urged the readers, these nationalist histories urged the readers, urged the readers, okay, to take pride in the India's great what achievements in the past and struggle to change the miserable conditions of life under the British rule. These efforts to unify people were not without any problems. I mean, there were so many problems. There were so many problems were there in the middle of achieving the nationalism. When the past being glorified was Hindu, when the images celebrated the dawn from Hindu what iconography, the people of other communities felt what left out. So in this way, now conclusion. I'm reading. So, a growing anger against the colonial government was thus bringing together various groups and classes of Indians into a common struggle for freedom in the first half of the 20th century. The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to channel people's grievances into organized movements for independence. Through such movements, the nationalists tried to forge a national unity. But as we have seen, diverse groups and classes participated in these movements with varied aspirations and what expectations. As their grievances were wide ranging, freedom from colonial rule into rule also meant what? Different thing to different people. The Congress continuously attempted to resolve differences and ensure the demands of the one group and did not alienate another. This is precisely why the unity within the movement often broken down. The high points of the Congress activity and the nationalist unity was followed by phases of disunity and inner conflict between groups. So, in other words, I can say what was emerging was a nation with many voices wanting freedom from colonial rule. So, here our chapter was ends. Now, here some pictures are there, students. I'll show you. For example, this picture. Last year, the picture questions were there. This picture. He will give one picture and he will ask which picture this is, in which occasion this picture was made. Similarly, here this picture yesterday I told you. This picture Chauri Chauri incident. Similarly, here this picture also will show. He will ask this picture, what is this picture is about? What is this picture is about? So this picture is about police cracked down the Satyagrahis in 1930. Similarly, here one important picture is there, that is this one. This picture will be asked. Actually, in this area, some symbols are there. So you will ask this one, who is standing in the middle? Okay, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. And what does it signify? See, what is it here? The Bal Gangadhar Tilak, an early 20th century print. Notice how Tilak is surrounded by the symbols of unity. He is surrounded by the symbols of unity on the frame. Okay, the sacred institutions of different faiths such as temples, church, masjid frame with the center figure like this. So this is Bharat Mata. This figure is Bharat Mata. So you will show this picture, you will give this image in the examination and ask what this picture depicts and what she is holding in their hands, the color of the dress and the features of this Bharat Mata. So all these things will be asked. So in this way, students, your syllabus is completed. Thank you very much. I suggest all my students to read the textbook line to line so that they can cover all the objectives and map pointings. Okay. Thank you, students. Take care.